Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night, thinking about something that hasn't even happened and probably never will? Maybe you replay a conversation that hasn't taken place yet. Maybe you imagine worst-case scenarios about your future. Or maybe you create problems in your mind and then stress about solving them. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Today, we're diving deep into the psychology of people who overanalyze imaginary problems, why it happens, and what it means. Let's start with a simple truth. The human brain is designed to solve problems. Thousands of years ago, this ability kept us alive. If there was danger, a wild animal, a threat, or uncertainty, the brain would immediately analyze, predict, and prepare. But here's the twist in today's world. Most of those dangers don't exist anymore. Yet the brain hasn't changed. So what does it do? It creates problems. Not real ones, but imaginary ones. People who overanalyze imaginary problems often have one thing in common. They are highly aware thinkers. They don't just experience life, they think about it deeply. Every action, every word, every possibility gets examined from multiple angles. At first glance, this might seem like intelligence. And yes, it can be. But when this thinking becomes excessive, it turns into something else, mental noise. Imagine your mind as a room. For most people, this room has a few thoughts moving around, manageable, quiet. But for overthinkers, that room is crowded. Thoughts are constantly entering, overlapping, shouting over each other. What if I say the wrong thing? What if they misunderstood me? What if I fail? And the most dangerous one, what if something bad happens, even if there's no sign that it will? This is where imaginary problems are born. They don't come from reality. They come from possibility. And the brain treats possibility as if it's probability. That's the case psychological trap. Let's break this down. When your mind imagines a negative scenario, your body reacts as if it's real. Your heart rate changes. Your muscles tense. Stress hormones are released. So even though the problem doesn't exist, the stress does. Now you might wonder, why do some people fall into this pattern more than others? The answer lies in a few psychological factors. First, the need for control. People who overanalyze often crave certainty. They don't like unpredictability. So their mind tries to prepare for every possible outcome. But since life is unpredictable, the mind never finishes its job. It keeps going and going and going. Second, fear of mistakes. Overthinkers often have a deep fear of being wrong, of making bad decisions, of facing regret. So instead of acting, they think and think and think, because thinking feels safer than doing, even if it's exhausting. Third, past experiences. Sometimes, this habit develops from past situations. Maybe they trusted someone and got hurt. Maybe they made a mistake and faced consequences. So now, the brain tries to prevent that pain by imagining every possible risk. But here's the irony. In trying to avoid pain, they create more of it. Overanalyzing imaginary problems feels productive. It feels like you're figuring things out. But in reality, you're stuck. There's no action, no resolution, just a loop. Think about this. A real problem has a solution. But an imaginary problem, it has infinite versions. Because every time you solve one scenario, your mind creates another. What if this happens? Instead, what if something even worse happens? It never ends. This is called analysis paralysis, where thinking replaces action. And action is the only thing that can actually move you forward. Another interesting psychological aspect. Overthinkers often believe they are being realistic, but in many cases, they are being pessimistic. They assume negative outcomes more than positive ones. Not because they want to, but because their brain is trying to protect them. It's like your mind is saying, if I expect the worst, I won't be surprised. But this mindset comes at a cost. You lose peace, you lose clarity, and sometimes you lose opportunities. Let's pause for a moment and reflect. How many times have you stressed about something that never actually happened? How many hours, days, or weeks have been wasted on problems that existed only in your mind? This is the hidden danger. Imaginary problems feel real enough to drain real energy. And the more you engage with these thoughts, the stronger they become. Your brain starts recognizing this pattern as normal. It becomes your default mode. So instead of thinking occasionally, you start overthinking constantly. At this point, it's not just a habit, it's a mental environment. But here's something important to understand. This doesn't mean something is wrong with you. In fact, many overthinkers are highly intelligent, emotionally aware, deep thinkers. The problem isn't your mind, it's how your mind is being used. Imagine having a powerful engine, but no direction. That's what overthinking is. Energy without movement. And when that energy focuses on imaginary problems, it creates anxiety, stress, and self-doubt, even in perfectly normal situations. Let's take a simple example. You send a message to someone. They don't reply immediately. A normal mind might think they're probably busy, but an overthinking mind, it creates a story. Did I say something wrong? Are they ignoring me? Did I offend them? What if they're upset with me? Within minutes, a small situation becomes a full emotional experience, all based on imagination. How overthinking turns possibilities into stress, and how your brain can trap you in endless loops of what if. Now the question is, how do you break free? Because understanding the problem is one thing, but escaping it, that requires awareness, discipline, and practice. Let's begin with the most important shift you need to make. Not every thought deserves your attention. This might sound simple, but for overthinkers, it's revolutionary, because you're used to engaging with every thought, analyzing it, questioning it, expanding it. But here's the truth. A thought is just a mental event. It's not a fact. It's not a prediction. It's not reality. It's just a thought. The problem begins when you treat every thought as important, especially the negative ones. Imagine your mind like a social media feed. Thoughts keep appearing, some useful, some meaningless, some harmful. Do you engage with every single post you see? No. You scroll past most of them. That's exactly what you need to learn to do with your thoughts. This technique is called cognitive distancing. Instead of diving into a thought, you step back and observe it. For example, instead of thinking, something bad is going to happen tomorrow, you reframe it as, I'm having the thought that something bad might happen tomorrow. That small shift creates distance, and distance reduces emotional intensity. Now let's talk about another powerful idea. Your brain is biased toward negativity. This is known as the negativity bias. Your mind naturally pays more attention to threats than to positive outcomes. Why? Because historically, survival depended on it. But in modern life, this bias becomes a problem because it exaggerates imaginary risks. So when you overanalyze, you're not seeing reality clearly. You're seeing a distorted version of it, one that highlights danger and ignores safety. The next step is learning how to interrupt the overthinking loop, because once it starts, it feeds itself. Here's a practical technique, the 5-second rule of awareness. The moment you notice yourself overthinking, pause. Don't continue the thought. Don't analyze it further. Just stop and ask yourself, is this a real problem right now? Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. Most of the time, the answer will be no. And that realization is powerful because it brings you back to reality. Another effective method is shifting from thinking to doing. Overthinking thrives in inactivity. The more idle your mind is, the more it creates. So the solution: take action, any action. It doesn't have to solve the problem. It just needs to shift your focus. Go for a walk, start a task, talk to someone, write something down. Action breaks the loop, because your brain can't deeply overthink while actively engaged. Now let's address something deeper. Many people overanalyze imaginary problems because they believe, if I think enough, I'll prevent bad things from happening. But this belief is flawed. Thinking is not control. It's an illusion of control. You cannot think your way into certainty. No matter how many scenarios you analyze, life will still be unpredictable. And that's okay. The real goal is not to control the future. It's to become comfortable with uncertainty. This brings us to a powerful mindset shift. Replace what if something goes wrong with I'll handle it if it does. This builds confidence, not in outcomes, but in yourself. Let's talk about emotional awareness. Because overthinking isn't just about thoughts, it's about feelings. Often, imaginary problems are fueled by underlying emotions, anxiety, fear, insecurity, doubt. Instead of addressing these emotions directly, the mind creates stories, scenarios, problems. So instead of asking, what if this happens? Ask, what am I feeling right now? This shifts your focus from imagination to reality. And when you identify the emotion, you can deal with it properly, instead of getting lost in endless thoughts. Another powerful tool is setting thinking boundaries. Yes, you can actually limit how much you think about something. For example, give yourself 10 minutes to think about a concern. Write everything down. After that, stop. No more thinking about it for the rest of the day. At first, this will feel unnatural. Your mind will try to go back. But with practice, it learns boundaries, because right now, it has none. Let's also talk about perfectionism. Many overthinkers want the perfect outcome, the perfect decision, the perfect plan. But perfection doesn't exist, and chasing it creates mental exhaustion. So instead of asking, what's the best possible outcome? Ask, what's a good enough step I can take right now? This shifts you from perfection to progress. Now here's something you need to hear clearly. You don't need to solve every possible problem in advance. Life is not an exam where every question must be answered beforehand. Some answers come only when the situation actually happens. Trust that. Let's revisit the example from part 1. You send a message. No reply. Your mind starts creating stories. Now apply what you've learned. Pause. Ask, is this a real problem right now? No. Reframe. They're probably busy. Take action. Put your phone down and focus on something else. Simple, but powerful. Over time, these small changes rewire your thinking patterns. Your mind becomes calmer, more focused, less reactive. But remember, this is not an overnight transformation. You've spent years building this habit. It will take time to unlearn it. Be patient with yourself, but also be consistent. As we come to the end of part 2, here's the core message. Your mind is a tool, not a master. You can choose which thoughts to engage with. You can choose when to stop. You can choose to live in reality instead of imagination. And once you do that, you'll notice something incredible. Most of the problems you feared never existed.